Welcome, everyone. My name is Kirsten Klipphaus, and I am the president of Google Cloud North America. I am excited to be here today with all of you. This is an incredible opportunity for us to connect. I've been at Google now for just about 2.5 years, and I'm leading our sales organization, our field-facing customer organization. And for the last several years, I've been in the technology industry, ranging in roles from field to headquarter roles, running customer service and support, running services-based organizations, as well as partners and many others. And I've spent time in big companies and spent time in my own startups and running startups as well. So been around this technology market for a very, very long time. But I'm incredibly glad to be here today to really talk about I Am Remarkable and actually bring together some really good conversation for all of us. You know, when I think about what's so important to me personally about diversity and inclusion and equity, I really think about why I'm here today and the opportunity that I've been given to be able to talk with you today and talk with an incredible peer of mine in the industry who I'll introduce in just one second. But, you know, it's an amazing opportunity that I've been given to be here. Not only, I think, have I worked incredibly hard to get here, but I have had just amazing support around me with others to help lift me up to be in the position I'm in today, to be able to lead an organization like Google Cloud. And it's important to me because people help people, and I'm here to want to help others too. And I think everyone deserves a chance to be able to get that platform. And we all have a platform and message, and that's why I'm so interested in I Am Remarkable and why I'm a sponsor of this at Google Cloud, because we all need that voice, and everybody in their own right does things that are remarkable. And whether you're contributing to a team, you're contributing individually, you're internally focused, externally focused, everyone is remarkable in their own way. And I really like the idea that we're able here to come together to celebrate those achievements across the spectrum of everyone, whether it's women, it's underrepresented groups, it's anyone in the organization. It's incredibly inspiring to listen to other people's stories and share, because that's how we all get better and we lift each other up to be into the roles that we're in. So that's a little bit about my personal story about why I'm excited to be here today and why I'm really happy with I Am Remarkable and I'm a sponsor of this as well. So I thought what I would do is I wanted to introduce myself, not only as the leader of Google Cloud, but also that I go by the pronouns she and her. And I think it's important that we recognize who we are. And today I want to recognize someone that's going to be here with me to have a fireside chat. I have another incredible leader who's out in the market today that's been one of our customers. She's also a colleague that works at one of our customers. I want to introduce you to one of my favorite friends, but just one second before I get to that. Part of the conversation, as we're going to go back and forth, will allow you to see the conversation between two different women working inside different industries, but also in technology. And so we'll be able to have a little bit of conversation too about how do things work not only at a company like Google, but how do things work like at her company? And is there differences and are there similarities? So with that, I wanted to introduce you to Shannon Johnson, who is a senior vice president and CTO at one of our customers, who is Global Payments. She is here with us today. I'm thrilled to have her here. I've known Shannon now for, about a little over a year now, working with my team directly. So glad to have you here, Shannon. And I welcome you to this forum. I'll let her introduce herself and give a little bit of her background, and then we're going to jump in a little bit.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. It's so great to be here. I was just pleased to be invited. My name is Shannon Johnston. I'm at Global Payments. I'm responsible for our consumer line of business data and architecture at Global Payments. And I would say that instead of customer, Kirsten, I would say we're partners. We've done a lot of really great things with Google Cloud over the last 3 years. I think we started building a data lake in GCP about 3 years ago, and it's been a tremendous success. And we've just really loved the partnership that you and your team have brought to us and the success that we've been able to achieve in partnering with Google. So really excited about that. My background is a little interesting in that I didn't go to school to become an IT person. I went to school and just tried to get out as quickly as possible. And upon graduating, had a little bit of a winding road and landed at TSYS in Columbus, Georgia, and just fell in love with technology at that point. And I will tell you that this was, I'll date myself, but it's been about 25 years ago. And it's a much different world today, for women, especially in IT. But I do think that IT is one of those great places that does embrace diversity. And so I think it's a really nice combination of topics today to talk about IT as an industry, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just sort of some of the successes that we've achieved. Kirsten, I agree with you. I would not be here today if it were not for the sponsorship that I have had over the course of my career. People inviting me to participate or to take on tough challenges, and I've just been so lucky to have that. And then hopefully we can embody that in do that for our teams as well going forward, just to keep that good stuff going. And so really, hopefully it's just very casual conversation today. I think we do have some time at the end for Q&A, and so I'm an open book, as it were. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Oh, well, and terrific. I do go by pronouns she and her. Agree with you, Kirsten. And I need one of those shirts, actually. So just
I'm going to get you one. Definitely.
I know, it's so
I think it's high enough up, we were saying, so we can see the I am remarkable.
So great. I love it.
It is. Well, and Shannon and I were talking previously a little bit too about just how much the I Am Remarkable initiative has impacted our organizations, but also this global initiative. There are organizations across the world using this and have taken it into their own organizations. They're running the I Am Remarkable program. They're getting sponsorship inside, and they're doing the program itself. So it is really having a massive impact globally. So I'm happy that Google actually is taking it up, and we're doing a whole week of it. We're one of many sessions this week. So hopefully people are tuning in to many of the different conversations we're having. But one of the things I wanted people to know a little bit is they like to know who they're talking with. And one of the things I recognized in your background we were going was you held a certification in upholstery. Okay, that's not IT. That I know of. I know we've got like data fabric and all that stuff, but what is a certification in upholstery?
Yeah, so I think I do enjoy having a little bit of fun with my bio, as you can tell. Yes, I'm a level 1 certified in upholstery, which I'm very proud of. It was a tough 10-week course. I would suggest that IT is an incredibly creative field, and what you'll find is that there are so many artists that sort of have happened into IT professions. And so I have a tendency to take night classes with my friends as a means of continuing to interrelate as well as learn something new while we're at it. And so painting and pottery and upholstery and those things, if you guys ever have any need to have another person come along for any of those types of projects, I'm your girl. I'll sign right up. And Monday nights from 6 to 9, we can use a staple gun together for sure, but I'm no good at it, which is sort of why it's funny, but
it's okay. I have a big background in that as well. My mom actually had a marine shop where she did upholstery for inside of boats and all that. So I know how to use an electric staple gun. I know how to use a hand staple gun. I know how to use an industrial sewing machine. So every now and then, I do get dangerous on the weekends too. So
I love
kind
that.
of fun.
I love that.
Kind of fun. The biggest problem is that I end up taking the machine apart half the time. That's my big thing.
Yes, I have a slew of unfinished projects of chairs that I thought would be wonderful recovered in a different fabric that are about halfway done. And so I have to work on that.
I'm going to share with you my favorite place, Williamston. Have you been up there? All About Fabrics up in Anderson, South Carolina, not far. Okay. Amazing textile manufacturer, and they have every kind of upholstery need you would ever want. So anybody that's on here that wants upholstery or fabric, that's a cool place. Not broadcasting. I don't know anything about that business other than I go there to buy stuff. So, but really cool stuff if you're into upholstery. So, all right, now people at Google, we always do this with each other, which is we open up by talking about a few things that would describe leaders or describe you as a person. And so if somebody was going to ask your friends or your family to name a couple words about you, what would they use?
Yeah. I would say determined, energetic, and positive. There are probably some others that aren't nearly as flattering, but those are 3 good ones.
Those are three great ones. So in the spirit of taking that over to I Am Remarkable, what does this whole diversity, inclusion, equity, how does that all come together for you, knowing you're energetic, you're positive, all those, how do you pull it all together?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it's all about listening and learning. How do we understand what somebody's point of view and perspective is? How do we add context to that point of view and perspective so that they can see, how what they're thinking and interrelates to the rest of what people are doing? And then how do we make sure that based on their perceptions of things, that we're helping them through the organization? And so, maybe better put is to say, if somebody's struggling with something, how do we give them context and education on different ways that they can approach that subject so that they don't get discouraged because perhaps they feel like, I'm not being heard because of X, or I'm not being successful because of Y. And so for me, diversity, equity, and inclusion is really about creating an opportunity for people to have a voice and then have their message land. And so how do we help people, A, get the opportunity to have a seat at the table, and then two, give them the courage and context to be able to speak up and speak up confidently. And for me, that's a lot of what it's about is, there's a lot of talent, and how do we pair that talent with opportunity so that we are really getting the best out of our diverse organizations if they're diverse already, or how do we create organizations that are more diverse and people come from diverse backgrounds and are comfortable in, being themselves because they know that they've got a voice and that their message will be heard.
And that's a big thing that I get asked about a lot too, which is you started with the first thing, which is how do you help people get a voice at the table? And, maybe you could share some of the ways you've done that, and I'll share some of the ways I've done that within my career, and actually maybe some of the ways people have done that for you.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good point. So I think two things, Kirsten. First is when I was younger in my career and female in a room of IT people, it was mostly male. And so I learned really quickly that, speak up, interrupt, and make sure that you're adding value to every conversation. And so I trained myself to do that and was fairly aggressive about it. Fast forward to, 20 plus years later, I have a title now. And so if I say something, there's a tendency for the room to say, oh yeah, no, that's a great idea. We should definitely just do that. Right. And so before, inclusion for me was speaking up and making sure that my voice was heard. And now it's more of not speaking and making sure that you're inviting other people to speak and give their input before they think that there's a differing point of view that maybe isn't going to align with what they're going to say, and then they're going to be nervous about saying anything, so they're quiet. And so that's A. And then B is I think exposure is a deliberate thing. It doesn't happen organically typically now, especially with COVID and people being so remote. We have to create opportunities for people to have exposure in the organization. And so it's one of the things I loved about when we did I Am Remarkable at Global Payments is that we deliberately invited people from different groups to participate in our inaugural session. And we really wanted to make sure that we had representation from all parts of the organization and all different kinds of roles and backgrounds. And that became its own group. This group formed a chat room, and they kept that sort of team alive even after the I Am Remarkable session that we held. And similarly, my chief of staff does an amazing job of doing a monthly lunch and learn, and we come up with the topics organically. They're all leadership topics that are not technical training. And what we have found is that people will come to the different sessions, and then those groups survive and do spin-offs of, groups that come together around whatever topic that may be. And so all of those things create exposure to different groups and parts of the organization. And then lastly, you can be really deliberate about it, right? And just say, hey, I want to invite somebody in my team to a leadership meeting and have them present so they get that skill and experience to do it, and just be deliberate about it and make it happen every time, instead of just saying, well, if you want to, you can, and if you don't want to, it's no big deal. But I think it is pretty deliberate in terms of creating opportunities for exposure and for people to be able to present and speak to groups that they normally wouldn't get to talk to in their day-to-day work.
Have you tried to actually tell people, like, I'm creating this opportunity for you and I want you to come here, and you're deliberate about telling them why you're doing it and what it is?
Absolutely.
Right.
We're aggressive about it, which is good. And we have a leadership team meeting that meets every Monday, and we keep a calendar and invite people to put their topic on the calendar and then come and present to the group. And it's full. It's full for the next 4 weeks. And so it's great. And I think if you have somebody who's maybe a little bit more timid or introverted who doesn't want to do that, I think it's encouraging them to do it and say, we'll do it together. I'll do it with you. And I'm in the room there. And so, want to be sure that, you feel like you can do it and you're comfortable, so they don't shirk away from that opportunity.
Right, exactly. No, it's an incredible opportunity, because if you're putting it out there, it makes it available, number one. But then, as you said, we can do it with you, right? I can be a partner in it with you. If you don't want to go do it, you can have somebody supporting you doing it, which is always the best way to overcome some of those fears sometimes. But you and I talked a little bit about this idea, how you kept it going alive. Like you just mentioned a little bit, like your chat room you talked about, and kind of the groups spin off their own groups. Can you say a little bit maybe more about some of the topics that you've talked about?
Yeah, so for the I Am Remarkable chat room, we had this aha moment that being able to talk about your performance in a positive way is a skill. And it's typically something that people don't teach and you're not trained how to do. And most people, it's just a very uncomfortable thing. I hate talking. I can say my team did this, and I'm very comfortable with that. Talking about I and me, oh. And so we decided during that, and I don't remember whose idea it was, and so I'm sad that I can't give them credit for it, but we decided that we needed to train, right? Like you would go to the gym to build muscle.
Right.
We decided on Wednesdays in the chat room, everyone in the chat had to post why they were remarkable. And so it was, at the beginning, it was very take no prisoners. Like you absolutely had to post. People were like, what about you? How are you doing? And people posted, and it got easier. It really did get easier. And I think it's one of those things where if you look at it like it's a skill you have to build, and you build the skill, it makes it so much easier to do it in real time when you have to do it, when you're in the elevator with the CEO, or if you're in, somebody says, hey, tell me a little bit about, what's happened over the course of the last quarter, then it's something you're much more familiar at doing if you're doing it often, and you're doing it in a group that's friends, right? Like this is sort of a safe place to stretch your wings a little. And then secondly, the leadership topics that we talk about and come up with sometimes are driven by the state of the world, in terms of, we did one recently that's like, how do you innovate when you're just so tired? Because COVID has taken so much out of people. And how do you really get people how do you keep encouraging people to be motivated? How do you create smaller goals and more frequent wins so that it doesn't feel like, we are just on the hamster wheel, continuing to go and go and go with no breaks in the action, and sometimes it's executive presence. We talked a little bit about exposure and having the opportunity to get in front of some of the executive leadership team. Being ready for that is important, and understanding sort of do's and don'ts, as easy as don't chew gum, don't look at your phone. Well, just stuff that, maybe, second nature to some, but isn't to everyone. And so, just those are some of the real simple topics that we've selected for the leadership luncheons, and they're the lunch and learns, and they've been so well received. We have tremendous attendance. We have tremendous follow-on after the fact. And now my goal is really to have our teams prescribe, what do you want to have the next lunch and learn be? How do we get the organization to drive those sessions so that we're really hitting the mark with what we're talking about?
And you're right, it's been a challenging couple of years too. And we do something kind of similar, like you and I talked about at within Google Cloud in North America, we do these leadership circles. And like you said, the nice part is it's a very small group, it's intimate. We get together, we really talk about, there's a theme, there's a topic, and then we break off into even smaller little groups. And so that we can actually say, like, how does that make you feel? Can you tell me like how that comes from your heart, or does that come from your head? And let's really talk through what we just went through. And then we come back together and talk about the themes. And then our leaders, all of us, go break out and do it with our own teams. And so it kind of has that snowball effect where we're able to kind of get to a much bigger group by nature of small groups versus starting at a really big group. A lot of these messages would get lost and people wouldn't know how to engage. We break them down into the smaller ones. So we've had a pretty full slate like you have with topics ranging from all the things going on with COVID right now, which gets every one of us, to a lot of the things going on in our own current market, like you say. I mean, whether it's, conditions occurring because of Black Lives Matter, and how do we all want to, get engaged? And then we look at, just an incredible, devastation that's happening with some of the weather conditions and the things that just happened now, and with the hurricane coming in, and how do we want to contribute and participate as leaders and lean in to the wildfires? And you kind of go down the list, and there's just been one thing after another. And we've had a lot to talk about because all of them impact people. And how do we ensure that we're staying connected in the right way with people? But a lot of us are uncomfortable talking about a lot of those things in the spirit of work. You might talk about them with your friends outside of work, but then when you come back into work, we're kind of like, I don't really know how to have that conversation sometimes at work, because you're afraid to have it. You don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or say the wrong thing. And so this was really a way for all of us in the leadership team to lean in and be completely okay being uncomfortable, because we knew we were going to get it wrong and we were going to say something that wasn't probably perfect, but it did give us the ability to kind of lean in and talk about it. And we're continuing, we do them monthly. And I agree with you. I think the biggest piece about I Am Remarkable is it's not a one-time thing. I Am Remarkable should go on, like you said, it's practice all the time, just as much as DEI should be all of the time. And you have to constantly work at it. It doesn't just happen. It has to come with us constantly working at it and acknowledging it's okay to work at it. I think sometimes we like to say, oh, of course it's going to happen. I don't have to participate fully. No, you do. We all have to participate fully. And it reminds me of, one of the comments I made to you before about like people helped you and I along the way. And like you said, you made the door open for someone. You give them an opportunity. You'll sit side by side. Can you share maybe an example of where, openly where somebody gave you that door for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been very fortunate to have bosses who are also sponsors. And I think, it's a rare gift to have a boss who says, you performed in this space over here. Let me give you an opportunity to lead in a space that is different. But because you've proven that you can do it, you can take on a task that maybe you don't have the formal background for. And so I've been really lucky to get opportunities like that.
And when you were given that opportunity, was it something sounds like you had to change a job, you changed functions, changed maybe your team, and you went somewhere else? And how did you
I'm sorry, they're doing yard maintenance. I don't know if you can hear it right now.
Oh, no.
Apologies for that. I'll muscle through it, and see. You could just yell at me if it's terrible.
No, I actually don't hear it. You're okay. But I think when you look at those.
Good. Okay, good. So the background noise muting is working, which is great. So yeah, I think, the biggest shift for me was going from running application engineering to running infrastructure at a company. And so truly completely changing jobs and groups, albeit within the same company. And this is a great way to get experience, is to move laterally to a different role in the same company, because you do have a reputation of proving yourself, but you could still gain experience in that skill. And so really loved getting that opportunity. I think it was something that helped me a lot, because I'm now back more on the application and engineering side of the house. Helped me a lot to understand what the infrastructure teams thought about the massive amounts of change that software engineers lob at them on a day-to-day basis, and really helped round out my technical capability.
I think that is important too, when you get those opportunities to step into them, to say yes. I think a lot of times our natural reaction is to say, oh no, I don't want change and I don't want to go do it. But, kind of like you said, going forward and stepping in, and it kind of does come full circle a lot of times. Anyway, when you look at your career over a period of time, sometimes it's hard to tell along the way, those points, how impactful they are. And then when now you have the opportunity, like, I've been in this for a long time, you can look back and see the impact that you can have from taking different positions. Like you're saying, laterally, not everything has to be vertically straight up. I think it's a great piece of it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think, I think the most important thing about understanding your capabilities and really embracing I am remarkable is saying, I can do it. I know I'm going to have to work hard and it's going to be different. And I'm not going to know everything like I knew in my previous role, but I can do it because, I tell so many people, if you don't think you can do it, nobody's going to think you can do it. But if you think you can do it, you'd be amazed at the amount of help and support you'll get for people who want to lift you into that role and have you be successful. And so it's so important to believe in yourself first, and then two, not be afraid to ask for help, because it's really there if you look for it. But so many times people feel like, oh, I have to have all 10 things in a job description perfect and 5 years of experience before I would say yes to a role, where I would argue if you think you can do it and you're willing to put the work in and you have people that you can count on to support you, go for it. Just go for it. So I'm sure, Kristen, in your career, you've had similar situations.
I've had similar ones, and I relate exactly to what you said, which is I think sometimes you take lateral roles and sometimes you take vertical straight up roles, but for different reasons. And sometimes just knowing why you're taking it is helpful. And I think it's great to have advisors to also tell you, like, you need to go do this role. You have really good support for these 2 or 3 skills. You're really good with customers. You're really good with management. You're a great leader. But I really want you to get operationally a little bit stronger and know how to run an engine or a machine or a big piece of the business. And so come take another job. And I think sometimes knowing that someone has a bigger idea than you even do about yourself gives you the courage to step forward and say, wow, yeah, I probably can go do that, because I do relate to it being encouraged. Even though you and I are sitting here in leadership positions, we also get nervous too about taking on new things. And it takes a lot of courage a lot of times to step out there and do something different. So I would say I've had the exact same experiences, and we should embrace them and take them. And I wish earlier in my career, I had taken more risks and chances to do different things. And before I got pushed to doing different things. And I think we can all look at those kind of moments. It makes me think about a couple pieces that, we actually talked about together, Shannon, previously too. And as a leader, you get to look across the organization and you start to see sometimes themes, particularly around DEI. And we're both in tech, you're in financial services. Is there differences or similarities, like other companies? You've been with TSYS before too. Do you see differences in how companies approach DEI because they're in a different industry? Or do you think it's all fairly much the same across industry?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think that there are some companies that are further ahead. They started maybe earlier and were really committed to it for whatever reason, either because it's the right thing to do or because we've all seen the numbers in terms of the benefits of, how much better products and even profitability are with highly diverse teams. So I think some companies are further ahead and other companies are starting to catch up. I do think that IT as a field is advanced in this area because we've had to. I mean, IT is such a global skill, and I'm fortunate enough to work for a very global organization, and so we have teams all over the world, and so we're diverse. We're a little bit diverse by default because we do want to have presence in all of these countries and want to hire locally, and then want to also make sure that we're, creating opportunities for those voices to be heard as to inform our products and services. And so I think IT is a great place to be, although I would say, it's very different than it was 20 years ago. I mentioned earlier, there were many times I was the only woman in a room. And while I think it's great that has come, has changed drastically in the last 20 years, I would suggest that it never bothered me either, because I always knew what my value proposition was. And so really felt strongly that that was an advantage, to be the representative in the meeting or in the organization. And so, I do think highly technical fields, even fintech, have come pretty quickly up the curve on DEI, because it's just such an advantage.
And it is one too, like you said, I think, and we've come a long way. I think we have a long way to go still too. There are still, depending on what even groups I'm sure you're part of and what meetings you're in, they're probably not as diverse as you'd like some of the meetings to be at, or some of the work that you're doing. And so I think inspiration for the bigger group is that we're gonna all have to stay in on this and link arms and continue to push. And like you said, practice, right? Like, you need to be an athlete to be remarkable. You need to be an athlete. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes of prep on this too, because I'm going to put you on the spot at the end to make sure we both tell everybody what our individual I am remarkable sentences are. So in the spirit of practicing, you and I are going to have to both share our I am remarkable statement, because I do think it's important, right? We have to constantly change. It changes too. Like, I think you're right. You said I am remarkable maybe 15 years ago might be different than what you say today. Sure. And my team did this about 3 weeks ago. We went through the I am remarkable, the leadership circle I was talking about, and all of us sat there and looked at each other and said, "Oh no, what do I say? How do I do this?" And it's great to practice it. So we'll come back at the end and practice I am remarkable. But one of the things I'm sure a lot of the people on this group want to talk about, I'm sure you get it a lot too, is how do you sort of manage it all, and tips and tricks. And we should talk through some of those, maybe examples, because it comes up regularly, particularly now with a video screen being in your face 18 hours a day. How do you fit it all in and make it work?
Yeah, boy, I wish I could tell you I had it all licked. And I do totally agree with you that we still have a long, long way to go on DEI. And we could talk more about that. But I think on the how do you do it all, I think the answer is you can't. Simply put, I would say my advice, and I gave this advice to my sisters as they were coming up through their careers and getting married and having children and trying to balance work and family. And I said, you can have it all, you just can't have it all at once. And so I think having it all is exactly the thing you need to define, because to your point about 15 years ago, your I am remarkable is different. Right now, my having it all is different than it was even 6 months ago, even than it was a year and a half ago. I'm sure all of us feel that way. And so really, I think you have to define what having it all means. And for me, most of the coaching that I've been doing for my mentees and other folks that I've been talking to lately is how to just avoid burnout. And that's almost having it all, is just how do we cope and avoid burnout? And how do we understand that even though your computer is here and it's just steps away from the rest of your family and your life, that, maybe 16 hours a day isn't healthy to spend sitting here doing this. And how do you carve out meaningful activities throughout your day? And my husband challenged me on this at the beginning of summer. And he said, listen, I want you to take an active role in figuring out, like, can we do breakfast together one day? If you have a break at lunch, can we walk around the neighborhood? Can you, if you can leave work a little bit early one night, let me know, and we can plan, we can plan these things so that, you're as active in planning sort of the decompression activities as you are in your day-to-day work. And so we don't have commutes into work anymore to get ready to work and decompress from work. And so how do you create those opportunities at home if most of you are still working at home? And so I would suggest, I think nothing replaces hard work. You have to work hard. You really need to love what you do. It's so great if you can be surrounded by a team who's fantastic, who you love working with, which I'm so fortunate to have just absolutely the most amazing coworkers who I also consider friends and really family at this point. We've been together for so long. And then, how do you really figure out, like, what's important to me right now? Is it career progression? Is it, family time because my child is at a pivotal age? Is it, a certain project or technology that I want to learn or get up to speed on? And then go after that and just try very hard, all of us type A people, not to pile your plate too full, and recognize that having it all could be an appetizer plate, not a dinner plate. And so, I think that's the hardest thing for me, is to really figure out what does success look like in that, and how do we really go for that in a meaningful way.
And maybe it's recovering that office chair that we're sitting on so much every day right now, too. I think I put that one on my list.
Zebra print.
Yeah. It's what I actually had a session with one of the prior companies I worked at. They had called me back up and said, could you come talk again to their I Am Remarkable team about some stories you had shared early in life, and early in my career, they talked about this having it all conversation too. And people had said, well, what's your work-life balance? That's usually, well, to me, that doesn't even make sense, because I'm never going to have a balance when I'm working. It's always going to be, my work is going to take, more time, if you look at it as a time balancing thing. So like you did, I reframe it to say, what makes me happy, and what are the things that are priority for me at that time? And so I had talked to them a while ago about a story that I had done earlier when I have 4 kids, and I had a bunch of them were all very active. They're all very close in age. They're all very active on sports teams and travel teams. And I was traveling all the time and beating myself up constantly. I was like on this constant state of unhappiness, because I couldn't be at everybody's thing. I couldn't be at work full time. Oops. And I couldn't hit myself in the face. And I could be a wife and do all those things that I needed to be a mom at one time. It was like a little bit overwhelming. And one of my mentors had said something very similar, which was a great tip for me, was just break it down. Break it down into what is going to work for you right now, not 2 years from now. Don't be mad about what you didn't do, because you're never going to get that back. So get rid of that, get the guilt off your shoulders. And let's just focus on, what do you think you can realistically set for a goal for yourself? And we talked about it, and then we kept whittling that goal down. And, of course, us A people go, oh my gosh, I want to make every one of my high school boys, playoff games, and I want to be there in the stands and cheering them on. Well, that was crazy. I was never going to do that, because I was traveling 5 days a week. So, it was really great. And my mentor was like, let's just break it down. What if you could make it once a week? Would you feel better about that? Sure, I'd feel great about that. And then if you add in once a week over, 4 weeks, you made 4. And so it was a funny thing to do, a real simple exercise, but just the freedom of having someone else helping really give you really good advice, and laughing at yourself. Because I was the one, no matter what I did, I wasn't good enough for myself on it. And I kept beating myself up. And it's like, hey, you made 4 games. That's fantastic. And you were there, and you were present, and you weren't on your phone, and you weren't in the outfield with 2 headsets going. You were there, you were present, and you sat down. So great. And that's what you're going to remember. And versus never really being there and being on the phone anyway, didn't matter. And so there's such freedom to have somebody else help you define what's really important. And now my kids are up and out, and I'm not worried about that anymore. So I've moved what's important, like you said, to things like, geez, do I get to go, see my husband and go out for dinner once a week, or we go for a walk, or we go surfing, or do something. Those are really fun things that you do, but you do have to plan. And I think that's a huge piece of advice for any one of us. We can always find all the faults with ourselves, but part of being remarkable is being, recognizing what you're remarkable at too. And there are so many good things for all of us. So it's a good, I'm glad you brought that up. But, another thought was, you talked a little bit about, certainly the last year, 18 months has been challenging, really challenging for a lot of people. What have you seen change the most? Because Global Payments wasn't a work from home primary company before either. Neither was Google. Right. What have you seen change the most?
Yeah, I think positively, it leveled the playing field for people who are not at our corporate headquarters. And so, people who were in some of our smaller offices in far-flung reaches of the world had the same seat at the table as somebody actually sitting physically in the conference room. And so that was really interesting, because there was a shift that occurred for that. And I loved that. I thought that was the the one positive thing, and since one of my verbs was positivity, I'll start with the positive. On the negative front, I think it's so challenging to communicate effectively 100% remote. And I think people are really busy, and now they're overwhelmed with chat and meet and email and just a constant barrage. There's no like walking in the hall or stopping into somebody's office to have a quick chat about something. And so every message has the same weight. And I think a lot of times some of the stuff gets missed. And even though you feel like you're doing a really good job of trying to be thorough in your communications, all the messages don't necessarily land, or they don't land necessarily with the right gravitas always. And so that's been a real challenge for us. And so we've amped up the number of sort of team meetings that we host, get-togethers. We've expanded the group that's invited to various and sundry of our group meetings, just to be sure that the most people are hearing the most things as often as we can possibly do that. That's been the hardest part. And then lastly, I took over an entire organization in the middle of COVID. Had never met any of them in person, and worked with them for 7 or 8 months before I got to meet them in person for the first time. And building a relationship remotely is not impossible, but it is a lot harder than sitting down with somebody over a meal or spending a day with them in their home office. And so when I did finally get to go spend time with my team in Austin, I felt like I accomplished more in a day than I had in 6 months, in terms of just really getting to an understanding of the team and who they were as people. And so I think that's been a real challenge, where pre-COVID, we could just get on a plane and go anywhere and spend some time and be like, okay, we're good, or we could do planning sessions in the same way. And so the creativity that we've had to be sure that we are hearing and saying and doing all the things that would normally come a little bit more easily in person happen in this virtual world.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I've worked remotely a lot. I've been in the a traveling role for many, many years. And it's been a bigger toll, you're right, because everyone's on the same playing field now. And in the past, sometimes it did create different groups, whether you were in the meeting room or you weren't in the meeting room, or you're in that location, or you're a affiliate location. And it's really changed the dynamic, I think, forever going forward. And I agree, there's some really good things about it. But I would say I think we all miss, like you said, we all miss the connections. And sometimes it's the little smile that you don't pick up, or sometimes you miss a little bit of the body language sometimes. And for many of us, we've hired in Google Cloud, a lot of our people have come on board the last 24 months, and I've never met almost all of them. Prior to that, I was out in the offices all the time, and we so miss, shaking hands, hugging each other, and just getting into like the little parts that aren't there anymore. But it's hopefully we'll get back to that soon enough. But do you have any examples of things that have been fun that you have been able to do that try to build that connection with a new team?
Yeah, so over the holidays, we did sort of remote holiday parties, and rather than just sitting around and talking, our team in India had found this tool online. It's some sort of like a Pictionary tool that you could use with teams, and people can guess, and then you get points and whatnot. And so we spent one of our sort of Christmas parties doing this virtual Pictionary, and you have to draw with your mouse, which is, most people aren't great drawers to begin with, and drawing with a mouse is purely impossible. And so it was hilarious to see the drawing, because of course nobody's good at it, nobody's expected to be good at it. And then the guesses that came based on the drawings were it was really, to me, that's one of the things that stood out as a highlight of something that I thought was really fun and entertaining. Everyone could participate in, and really sort of had a good camaraderie in the team, making fun of one another for their drawings and their guesses and all of that. And of course, I'm hugely competitive, so I was in it to win it. So had a good time having a little bit of a competition too.
That's fun. That's fun. We've had some interesting ones. Favorite hat days. People have dress up days. We've had a lot of cooking. A lot of cooking. Like we've had, make your favorite coffee, and someone shows the team how to make for just 5 minutes to just kind of get to know each other a little bit. But some really fun ideas, and I hope we don't lose those too. If we do get back more to an office-based environment or hybrid environment soon, that we don't miss like making sure you have that dedicated time to connect with people too, which has been important. So there are a couple audience questions that I know we're going to want to get to. We've got about 10 minutes. So we're going to want to get to some of the audience questions. And then I'm going to save 5 minutes kind of at the end here to do a quick little wrap up of your closing thoughts, my closing thoughts, and do your I am remarkable statement. So get ready. I'm giving you 2 warnings now, Shannon. We're going to have a good one here.
I think I'm going to wing
it. One of the questions that came in from Anna and out in the audience, thank you for submitting it, was, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received regarding leadership?
Yeah, I will tell you, again, this is one of the things I've been very fortunate about. I've had bosses, especially, who are very willing to be honest with me. And I needed honesty because I was very full-spirited in my much younger days. I think the best advice I've ever gotten about leadership is really about, don't ask somebody to do something you're not willing to do. And for me, it's really about how do I push back before I even make the request of my team if something doesn't seem reasonable, and create that buffer for them. And secondly, if we're going to do something, how do I engage the team to do it in a way that they're excited about, where they're coming up with the solution? It's not just me saying, hey, go do this. And so for me, that's one of the sort of foundations of leadership for me, in terms of just, A, let's be sure that what we're asking is reasonable, and if not, let's push back. And then secondly, define the problem statement, and then let the teams really be creative in solutioning it, because the output and their engagement levels are so much better if they're not just being told nobody wants to be told what to do, right? And so, and then I have a host of other really funny ones, which is like, don't let what you're wearing distract from what you're saying. That's one of my favorite ones. That's not really leadership as much as it is just common sense, but I needed to be told that one early in my career. And so, again, I've had so many really great mentors who are also bosses, who have been willing to just really, that I learned from, because they were very great leaders. And so I think, you can learn as much from a not great leader as you can learn from a great leader. But I think for me, I always try to take the things that I see embodied in other leaders and do it again, because it's something that I like and appreciate and think works.
That's good. That's a good one. And I like to don't get too caught up in yourself sometimes. I think that's like kind of what you're saying. And I appreciate that. And it reminds me of one of the comments people often say, well, what's your favorite kind of saying? And I get that a lot. And I think about it's one of the things my dad always said to us growing up. And it was like, he said, you always go to bed with yourself. I thought that was the weirdest conversation for my father to say to me. I was like, what do you mean by that? And it took me a long time to understand it. And what he was always saying to us was like, you always have a chance to make it right. You check yourself in every night. Like, you don't get to not go to bed and think about what you did. And if something wasn't right, set it right the next day. Don't let it go any further. Whether right. You said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing, you did the right thing, congratulate somebody else, like whatever it is, like make sure you always don't go more than a day without checking yourself in. And I think that's so good. And I try to live by that literally, as every day I try to sit and say, okay, what did I do really well today? What could I be doing better? And go fix it. If maybe it was too hard in some of the words I used, or I wasn't clear enough, or I wasn't supportive enough, or whatever. Did you leave somebody out, right? Go fix it. And I think that's great.
I love that, because I do think, we're human, right? And boy, right. I stub my toe as often as anyone else. And I do think it's really important to apologize if you get it wrong. I mean, I've gotten it wrong. My team, I said, oh, I've overreacted about that, or I should have done this, and my mistake won't happen again, and I just think that's so powerful. That, and I really, really believe in the power of thanking. Yes. people who have helped you or who've done a really good job, or, we all get paid to work, but it's just the most powerful thing is when somebody in my career has been when somebody has thanked me. It's just such an unexpected thing. And it's just such a powerful thing to be able to say, really appreciate that you did this. This is, amazing, et cetera. But as well as just saying like, hey, I messed up. That wasn't the way I wanted it to go. And so we'll do better the next time.
Exactly. You mentioned earlier a couple parts. I think Grace asked a question on this on the audience about some other companies that might be ahead of some of us with their DEI efforts, or you talk about industries maybe, or company cultures being different in that regard. Do you have any examples of things that you've looked at from others outside of Global Payments? You say, well, I think they're doing a really good job and we're trying to shadow that or maybe learn from that. Are there any good areas you would recommend?
Absolutely. And we are partnering with firms on this as well. And so, this is something that, and when I say us, I mean tech. I don't necessarily mean global payments specifically, but, I think fintech and the fintech industry, when you look at Big Four consulting, they are ahead of us, I believe. These are organizations that hire tens of thousands of undergrads a year, and they have to be absolutely cutting edge in terms of their programs and capabilities around DEI, around social engagement, around all of these topics that other companies maybe don't have to be quite as adept at, either because they're not hiring as many people or they're not hiring folks that are straight out of college, where this is really important to the generation that's younger than mine. And so I think it's just so interesting to watch what they're doing. I mean, you can go to any of their websites and it is so evident how important this is to them, and all of the programs they're putting in place for working mothers, and leave time to go back to school to get educations, and just all of the programs that they have in place. It's just really, really impressive. And so, yes, I do think that there are companies that started on this, earlier because of need or desire or what, and they've done really spectacularly at it.
Yeah, and there are some good things to learn, and I think you're right. We have to bring those back into our companies, and everybody, like our companies themselves are. Over the last couple years, we've hired a lot of people. You have as well. Everyone has experiences to bring, and making sure we're learning from them and getting them out and making ourselves better is a big piece of this. And that's kind of what I Am Remarkable is all about. So we have a couple minutes to kind of wrap on maybe a couple closing thoughts for this group on how do we continue the conversation and keep it going after today for everyone that's here.
Yeah, I do really believe in this notion of practicing, because I think, I think this is a skill. I don't think any of us were born with the ability to talk naturally about what we do and what we're good at. I mean, I'm still worried about telling you my I Am Remarkable stuff that's coming up in like 2 minutes. So don't worry, I'll get there. But I do really think that it's important for everyone to have people they trust in their professional and personal lives, where they can ask those questions and get really honest feedback, and can practice how to say things like, I did XYZ well, or this is my value proposition, or, and I think that if you can have those confidants, peers, people in your group, people who are senior to you, your husband, your sister, your best friend, these are the folks that you can practice with and really, really work that skill out. I mean, some people I know will be at home and practice a presentation in front of their family, right? It's the exact same thing. It's no different than that. And so really, I think use it like it's a muscle, and really try to grow it by doing it often. Because I think as you get better at it, it gets easier to do and more natural. And then it's such a nice thing to have it just be organic, and easy to come by.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. And I'd also say too, like holding each other accountable to those things too is really important as you practice it. Like call each other out, right? How are we doing on it? And are we really practicing what we preach, right? Are we really doing the right kind of support for DEI across not only leadership, but how we're doing across our cohort or our teams, and making sure we have that conversation too, versus just saying, oh, well, we'll cover that next time. No, let's put it on the table and really talk about it. So being accountable to it is important too. So we've got 2 minutes. You and I both have to do our I Am Remarkable statements. Are you
You
ready?
should go first, Kirsten.
Oh, of course. I'll go first. All right. I'm going to go with mine. All right. So you can see my shirt. You can read it. I can start with this first. So I am remarkable with the joy I get in working and seeing others succeed, not only in their work life, but in their personal life.
I love that. I love that. I'm remarkable because I can't believe that I got invited to chat with all of you guys today. It's such a humbling experience to even be invited for me. Thank you for that. And because throughout my whole career, I have maintained my approachable grassroots, tell you anything off the top of my head, which sometimes gets me in trouble, point of view, but that I love, and I hold on to that firmly. But I think that is one of the things that makes me remarkable.
Well, you are remarkable. And thank you so much for doing this with us. I was thrilled to have you here. It was not only a pleasure getting to work with you all the time, but today sharing all your experiences. And I really do appreciate your just openness and willing to put it out there and talk about it and have this honest conversation so that all of us can learn and get better. And we're better because you were here today. So thank you, Shannon, for being here, and for Global Payments for allowing you to be here with me today. And congratulations to all of you listening in. And thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Kirsten.